Pissed when I went to bed, still pissed when I woke up. A discussion of Jazz bigs, a few notes around the NBA, and a memory of Karl Malone. Plus BYU, Washington State, Utah versus Northern Colorado. College football is upon us. I moved to Utah, and I had to have people make DVDs for me so I could watch Utah BYU. Bum, 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 bum. And I mocked the mountain and Craig Thompson and the absurdity of it all. Bum, 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 and now we're back at it again with the Pac-12 and not being able to watch the game. And if I really had to watch Utah, Northern Colorado, I'd have to go to someone else's house today. Bum, 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 bum. Who should have thought anything else was ever going to happen? All right. The brand is Jazz, NBA, Utah sports. And I have to try to stay very hard today to be on the brand because I was so pissed last night when I went to bed at news coverage, and I still am this morning. I am just all right, and none of you probably care, but I'm not capable of like doing this show while thinking about something else. So I have to just share this with you. So Paul Ryan last night gets up and talks about how the real threat to Medicare, which is pretty dang important because we really can't have a whole generation of elderly people without income not getting medical care. Like, I mean, it's a real, like, we just can't, like, that's a real issue. So how we do it is really important. And Paul Ryan gave a speech about how his program and the voucher system is much less of a threat than Obamacare. Okay, now everything I have ever read doesn't necessarily say it, but that might be true. Okay, I don't know what's true. I don't know, and frankly, um, I maybe you know, but make sure if you're telling me you know that it's not just that you're a Republican or a Democrat. So it was interesting. He said these things. It was a different perspective. It's not necessarily what I have been led to believe when you read things, and I read everything. I don't read one side of the table. I pride myself on that. And so I turn on the news because they to me are who would analyze this to be able to tell me whether this is accurate or where maybe it's not quite accurate or whether it's not. Okay, like what's the truth? And I've got that balding guy with the worst comb over ever sitting up there telling me, well, there are a lot of things that weren't really true today, but those are big picture items. You're a TV analyst in the news media. So what was inaccurate, because I just watched it, and now I'd like to know what was accurate. Second one was I get a bunch of undecided voters who know crap, and I get to know what they thought. I don't care what they thought. I want to know what's accurate. I want to know what I'm really deciding between. What really the impact would be. Oh! It's just a joke. Okay. I don't feel better. I'm just pissed. Like, what happened? When did news coverage become the desperate housewives of a bunch of losers sitting there on a news cycle for 24 hours? And is it just because we bought into the narrative that one side is right and one side is wrong, which is just not true? There are areas where one side's policies might be better for the country at one time than another, and another side. But anyone who, and I'm probably as guilty of this as anyone else, who is a lifelong one-party member that's over the age of 40 has had to dramatically change what they believe to be able to be a member of that one party the entire time. Because if you go back and look at the 1976 or 1980 election, the issues and what we believed in and what one party believes in versus the other are, like in many cases, woof, okay, I'm done. I'm not done. I could go for like 20 minutes, and I'm pissed. I'm pissed at the news organizations for not exposing these people. I'm pissed at us for not being demanding it. And I'm most pissed at the fact that these guys, and it's not just Florida, it's going to happen next week in the Democratic National Convention just as badly because these guys know they can stand up there and they can say whatever the heck they want, regardless if it's true in any way, shape, or form, and no one's going to call them on it. This is not a partisan conversation. I will, if you'd like the same rant next week when the Democrats stand up there and spew a bunch of crap, I'll do it then too. The Republicans just happened to go first last night. All right. The picture of Enes Kanter has led to, see, that's much more exciting. But though my wife has always told me I'm never allowed to host a political talk show because that's how you get people on your doorstep. Here you get friends and fans. Politics, you get people showing up at your doorstep. She's probably right. We're having this ongoing discussion about the Jazz bigs, and we have too many bigs and logjam big. And what are we going to do about minutes? How about we go backwards for a second? Let's talk about Kanter. What is Kanter at 20 years old, having played 5 years of basketball, really ready for? What the picture the other day, and what every report I've had, and the fact that the 2 times I've been at the practice facility, he's been there, and he's been in Chicago, he's been in Santa Barbara, he's worked incredibly hard. What I think we've learned about Kanter is he understood he had a lot of work to do. He's into working. He doesn't have a lot else. He has a very, very interesting upbringing. I mean, I don't know how over the language barrier we're going to be able to get through it, but I would just, if I was to totally stereotype his upbringing, I would stereotype his upbringing as that old school Eastern European kind of regimented. My only concern on him right now is that one day he might snap because my understanding of his upbringing is, he went to school. He told us this. He went to school, and he had tutors, and he wasn't allowed to play. And then finally he started to get big enough, he started to play, and he was just better than everyone at such a young age. And then he evolved into it. And then they finally sent him to the States to get an education, and that got all screwed up. And he ends up in the NBA making millions. What's interesting is, like, I asked him, are you going to go back to Turkey to see friends? Not really. His parents didn't come to visit him last year. This is not it's very different than the kind of American coddled parenthood or the whole social. His friends somewhat to him are in Kentucky, or his brothers in Boston. It's very different. So, maybe out of boredom, but he's certainly working out. He's into that and getting himself in physical condition. So now the question is, what do we expect out of him? I don't in any way, shape, or form think that he'd suddenly be ready for 30 minutes. And I think, last year I think he averaged about 16, and I'd like him to play those 16 better, frankly. We were terrible offensively when he was on the floor. By the end of the year, he really struggled defensively at some points as well. And he really, through effort and perseverance, got through a season where his rebounding skill carried him, but I didn't see flashes of a guy that was ready to play 30. There were a few nights where he got a bunch of time and he did some things, but they were unique nights in unique matchups for the most part. Unlike Favors, who I thought, you're seeing, it's like, okay, let's go, come on, let's go. Kanter, I didn't see that, and maybe we'll see that in Kanter's second year. But as we stand right now, my best case scenario on Kanter would be that he would be ready for 24 minutes a night. I think he's going to have a hard time getting those 24 minutes a night. But I think that that's best case scenario. More likely, he's still at the 16 minutes a night. Maybe he gets to 18 minutes a night, and he just needs to play those better than he has in the past. So now, if you think about that for a second, and we talk about, we have too many bigs in Jefferson, Millsap, and Favors. If you move one of those 3 bigs, you are suddenly asking Kanter to probably play 25, 28 minutes a night. Next year, yes. But this year, I don't think so. And so the logjam really has to do with the fact that Favors is probably your number 1 big here, and then Jefferson's your scoring big and hopefully improves defensively. And I thought last year, really for the first time, in my opinion, Jefferson really proved that he is a bona fide NBA starter. He struggles against the big time guys and he kills the second tier guys. And I do think if there's a way to get Jefferson more minutes on second tier guys, I think he'd be unbelievable. I'd love to find a way in the rotation that Jefferson starts and Millsap is a quick sub, uh, really quick, really early, 7-8 minute mark, allowing Jefferson to circle back for the final 12, maybe final 2 minutes of the first quarter and down into the second quarter against second tier bigs. Because when he faces a second team defensive guy, he kills them. I mean, I think if you could get him the majority of those possessions, his shooting percentage could skyrocket from 50% to 54, 55, and then he's a totally different player on this team. So that's a thought. By the way, I totally apologize for that rant to start the podcast. I just was incapable of moving past it. So that is completely my failure. I apologize. I feel so much better a little bit right now, and I can actually talk about these issues with favors and stuff. So my point here is that on Kanter, we're gonna have a hard time getting him to 18, and we're gonna have a hard time getting Millsap quite enough, and probably favors if he's off is not. But the alternative is you move Millsap or Jefferson, and you're asking Kanter too much, and you're out of balance the wrong way. So until Kanter is really ready to play 25, 28 minutes a night, which I think is the year after next, third or fourth year with Biggs, and his experience is so limited that he could be on the fourth year side of things. Uh, that to me matches better than I kind of feel like you deal with our logjam. And then to the second point of this is the more we can kind of maneuver that logjam, I think there's some real things to do. And I do strongly believe that Jefferson against second tier bigs is a good idea. Dime Magazine did an interesting piece. They're just rather than talking, they're joking about rather than talking like Etuan Moore signing. and let me say that if you let Kanter go, I mean, if you let one of those guys go and Kanter's your third, who's your fourth big? Like, look at Josh Harrelson's getting tryouts right now. And if somebody gets hurt, bah. So keep an eye on that. Dime Magazine did an interesting thing. They went back to a Karl Malone game. They talked about when Malone had a triple-double for the Lakers as one of the most underrated performances of all time. It's the oldest triple-double ever, and it's the fewest minutes ever by someone on a triple-double. Malone really was great that year with the Lakers. It's too bad he got hurt. But it was an interesting point. In 1985, when this happened, there were 5 players. It wouldn't have been 85. It was Malone's rookie year, 85. Malone's rookie year in 85, there were 5 players 35 or older. Last year, there were 29 players in the NBA 35 or older. I mean, I don't know if that's science or physical conditioning or what, but it is quite interesting. Minnesota's looking to move J.J. Bray or Luke Ridenour. And now let's turn quickly to college football. BYU against Washington State is the game. Utah, Northern Colorado. 2 thoughts on it. I'm not going to see it, so you'll have to tell me about it. And by the way, some of the listeners are building a Google Plus events page, which looks really cool for both of these games. I was going back and forth with them. If you're on Google Plus, and I got to communicate with them a little bit more today. I don't want to steal their idea. Their idea is awesome, but there's some question of whether I take their idea and move it over to my David Locke Google Plus page just because I have more followers and it's a common spot. So follow Twitter and Facebook, and we might move some stuff over to Google Plus. It's actually a place where you could post extended thoughts on the show. You could post photos of the game. I could host a hangout during the middle of it, and it creates kind of a really cool collection of things. And I don't want to steal their idea, but I would like to help their idea, and there might be some reason why. So keep an eye on David Locke Google Plus page today if you're looking for a way to watch the Utah or BYU game. It's really cool. I tip my hat to these guys for the work they've done. On the Utah thing, by the way, Pac-12 has made a tactical error here. They're going to have to give up the money to DirecTV and lower their rates and not make as much because the DirecTV has them. No one's dropping DirecTV because anybody who has DirecTV wants it for the NFL Sunday ticket. And no, the Pac-12 football and Pac-12 basketball are not going to get anyone or enough people to drop DirecTV and go to cable when DirecTV has the exclusive rights to the NFL Sunday Ticket, and the Pac-12 has completely missed the boat on this negotiation and have no leverage. And uh, DirecTV is on the dance floor with a sexier partner, and the only way they're going to get involved is if they get to participate as well with that dance partner in a three-way conversation rather than having DirecTV dump someone for them. So that they're in trouble in that regard. And then BYU. Few things to watch in this game. Let me just say, here's what I'm very curious about. The narrative right now, and I never trust the narrative. That's kind of the essence of who I am. The narrative is that BYU's got a different defense and an atypical defense to who they are, and they're going to be totally different defensively. And I can't buy this. If this is based on holding Idaho and New Mexico State to 7 points last year and Idaho State to 3 points, I'm not willing to do it. Oregon State scored 28 points on BYU last year. They averaged 21 for the season. They were the 100th best offensive Division I team in college football in a conference that didn't have a lot of defense. That was not a good offensive team. University of Southern Florida, who did not play in a great conference last year, only scored 17 points against BYU in one of BYU's better defensive outings. But they did have 400 total yards in that game. And BYU just dodged a lot of bullets and did a lot of things really well. But last year, that they averaged 400 total yards. So they kept them out of the end zone. Utah put 54 points on them. Texas, who BYU had a pretty good defensive day against, with 17 points, but Texas was a terrible offensive team last year. So I'm not sure. Maybe it's new guys and new personnel, and this. I don't buy the narrative that BYU's defense is better than it ever has been. There's nothing tangible for me to believe this with. So we'll see. And the key, I think, we've all talked about the same thing, and that is, when they throw they'll run the 4 vertical routes, and then they'll drop somebody underneath, and usually the running back at Texas Tech got a lot of catches, and you got to tackle. And I think BYU will be able to tackle pretty well in those circumstances. What's the bigger concern is if the quick hits to Marquise Wilson or things like that out of the old Arizona State offense type stuff. If Leach integrates some of that, and then you make the tackles, whether you make tackles. But the other one I really actually would say is, to me, the front defensive line of BYU, I think, should be very good. And so the run defense is going to be vital. The discussion from so many people, and pointed out to me from my podcast with Ian, is that they're going to be a 2-4-5. I hope they can defend the run. That's a key thing here, is that if for some reason they stop being able to get easy, that they're suddenly allowing 5-yard gashes on that 2nd and 6 play or something of that sort when they have the 2-4-5 into the game, then the defense could have a tough day. And I think I think BYU wins this game, but I think there's still, I'm not buying this narrative that somehow they're going to be able to stop Washington State. Excited to watch that one. Really, really excited to watch that one, and won't be able to watch Utah Northern Colorado. Have a good one. Got to get the kids up out of bed for school. Make a little French toast to surprise them this morning. See, we're doing it all. I'm just trying to get happy inside. Just happy inside. Sorry for the rant. See you guys.